My name is Sigurd. I'm CTO for DIPS, and I will start with a few slides about DIPS for the international. We are a company that rounded 200 employees last year, working very much in electronic health record, have been that for many years, but also what we know as PAS in Norway, administrative processes, and also working with medical services and integrations. 25 years of history, office in those 4 cities in Norway, and we have customers in 3 of the 4 Norwegian regions. A few words about the history. It started as part of the IT department of the Bodø Hospital in '87. And then it was used for internal use, but later it has been delivered to the North region first of all. In '97, DIPS was founded as a company, and in '99 we delivered the first Windows-based EPR, EHR in Norway. That was part of the 2000-year problem. We were able to run it out. And since then, we have grown from being the smallest vendor to being the largest vendor in the Norwegian market. Those who use DIPS today know what we can call the classic version. The login is like this, with it's a system Windows-based, but based on what was the user interface of 1999, and it's implemented initially in Delphi. More than 500 features, 7.5 million lines of code. It's a huge system. It has 62,000 users in Norway today. This will increase in the autumn when we start to run it in the Oslo University Hospital, and then it will be approximately 80,000. We are covering 3 of 4 regions in Norway today, not mid-Norway. They are using a combination of Siemens and Tieto. And currently today Oslo University is not using that, only a part of it, but the plan is to do that at the 20th of October this year, as you can see from this picture. So that was the introduction about the company. Then we go to tell a little more about our electronic health record, which is more or less a migration from today's DIPS into a new generation, which we called DIPS Arena. We had 3 objectives with this version. One is to introduce much more structured information in the documentation part. We see that this is necessary both to reuse information, but also to find information and utilize everything that we've been talking about the last 2 days. We also want, to much higher degree, to support the processes in the health sector, and particularly the clinical workflow. And of course, we also would like to enhance the user interface. That is why we have spent a lot of effort trying to make a much more up-to-date user interface. But we are not just going to copy the existing version of DIPS. We are going to create a new generation and to have support for these 3 objectives. And we also see that one of the biggest problems would be we have today is to be able to deliver functionality fast enough. Today we have to write code for many of the things we need to put in the system, new functions. We want to make this much more flexible so that we can spend the time of our developers as efficient as possible. And in order to do this, we have introduced what we call model-driven development, which basically is that we deliver a kernel of a system that is much easier to configure than current systems. The configuration should be both the forms in the system, the workflows, and also the processes and how to connect this to the guidelines, as you see here on the top. So the top level of this should be model-driven. The bottom level should be core functionality in the system. And we have looked very much into the OpenEHR when we selected this main architectural model that has been the basis for our new development. So basically, we will introduce a new group of users, the domain experts, the clinicians that are modeling the content and the behavior of the system. And this is quite a new way of doing it. We have been modeling the system we have today, but we will do much more of this in future generation, and Tomas will come back to this. So now, a few words for how we'll have utilized EHR. Thomas Will talked yesterday very knowledgeable about the OpenEHR. I'm just repeating some of the files. This is taken from Ron's presentation some years ago here. This shows all the elements in the OpenEHR reference model, or the reference model is actually this part. The service model is here, and you have the archetype here. The virtual EHR is and the EHR service is what you actually have to implement into the system, utilizing all these specifications. And we are focusing on implementing this. And if you look at the system architecture, this picture is taken from the standard, from the architectural document. You can see we can implement an OpenEHR EHR in different ways, either on top of legacy databases. We can add query engines or implement it on top of these kind of services. We can have specific application utilizing a virtual EHR, or we can have a web-based solution. And we have very much selected this approach here in the current implementation. And here are, this one doesn't look well on the screen. It shows the service orientation, which is very much the core of our architectural approach. It should have some error here that is not shown. If you look at the architecture for the new DIPS Arena, it's service-based. We are partitioning the system according to main functions, but we are also having a layer structured with the storage, the persistence layer at the bottom, being both an Oracle database, but also we are adding index services using Solar. And we also have added recently a new reporting service. At the application level, here we have our main modules. Health record is the most essential one, and this is also the one that today are supporting archetypes and OpenEHR. And we have different components on the client level, both for desktop, and we're also doing some first implementation of mobile clients. This part is very important to us. We are integrating with more than 100 different partners in the Norwegian market. And we do this through a set of interfaces here, and with supporting services for those interfaces. From the client side, where we have context management across our own and other clients, with message broker to handling all kind of message traffic to and from DIPS, and a new service broker, which is basically offering a number of REST interfaces. We have been used to make available what we call DIPS API, but this is an old-term COM-based solution that we will substitute with a REST-based solution. Also in the service broker, we are currently supporting Health Level 7 CDA in some interfaces, and we also support IHE XDS. Here are examples of different third-party systems that can integrate to DIPS. We also have other programs outside the EHR, which are used in the Norwegian healthcare to communicate with typically primary care and other systems, like the DIPS communicator and interactor, which is used by the primary healthcare and social sector to send referrals to the hospitals and lab requests. If you look particular at the health record, focus on that part, we have today, or the traditional DIPS as you know it today, has a document service serving text documents and storing them in what we call the DIPS DB inside our Oracle database. We have recently added search in free text using an index service based on Solar, but now what's been working with for the last 2 years is an archetype-based service that stores the data in a structured manner in the database, with an ability to also to query information and to have a form mechanism for taking templates from archetype templates and converting them to forms by an automatic way as an engine. On the top here we have the interface to the health record, and then a number of modules that are utilizing the services from the health from the archetype interface. So this is the virtual electronic health record service as you saw it on the previous picture. I will not go too much into the technical details, but try to show you some of the concrete examples how we have implemented it in, and as it shows up in the user interface. And this is the new Arena user interface. This is what you get when you log into the system. You get a desktop with a number of tiles equal to what you see in Windows 8. And when you then select a patient, you get some new tiles. You get the name of the patient here with some details about the patient. You can enhance this. And then you get information from the patient record. Here you can see the latest contact documents and a tile for all the documents. And here panorama, which is viewing time in a time chronic. These tiles are independent on the patient. These are for the specific patient. Here you can have, you can have patient list that goes across for, many patients. For example, searching for all patient on a specific post. These tiles are for more administrative purposes, which is probably not available to all users. In the new user interface, we can show documents. These are the latest notes on a specific contact. You can also have contact information. More persistent information like previous illness and also what kind of medication you are standing on that are persistent over more than one contact. When it comes to archetypes, I've taken an example and run through the system yesterday. and I'm taking the one that have been selected most here, the blood pressure. So even though maybe this is not the best example, it's used a lot in the OpenEHR. So here is the mind map of blood pressure, and we have implemented a way to import that definition from the CKM into DIPS. So, and the way we do it, if this just is to illustrate internal process, we import the archetype, we import the template, the old operational template, and then we today generate user interface automatically based on the template. And we have like 3 different modus for the same template. And then depending on what you want to show. So if we start by adding information, we can open this new window here that gives you a possibility to select different templates. And this one is for admission note, and I then added just blood pressure to that. I then will get this form where I get up the fields which I have put as mandatory for blood pressure to register. So here is systolic 140, diastolic 25, and the right arm is the place of measuring. I can click OK on that, and I get this one into the document. This text I've written, and this one has been automatically added. So the structured information is now put into a sort of document form, but the blue underline indicates that here we see an archetype. I can do the same with measurement like temperature and pulse, and I will get the document like this. And I can now click OK and save this document, and I will both save it as a document but also registered in the archetype database, the new data in structured form. And then if I switch to the timeline view, I can see the new registrations, also the value of the registrations like this. So this is showing how we are now reusing measurements put into structured archetypes. Here you can also see a registration done some 1 hour before. So you see the history. And the red line is the point in time when that is actually now, when I did this screen shot. I can also use the patient list and add this kind of information to the patient list. Here I have selected that I would like to see, it's maybe a little difficult in the back, but I have said that I want blood pressure and pulse and also the temperature to be in the list of patients for one department, for one post. And you can see the same, the latest value for each of these is now turning up in this patient list. And the ability to take structured data and present it in a timeline, we did last autumn. We connected it to a medical device, and we took a lot of data into the system using the interfaces we have and store them in the archetype database. So basically, up to now, we have looked into operations, which is one type of archetypes. We can also have evaluations, and we can also have instruction and actions, which are other part of the domain models for archetypes in the OpenEHR. I just want to give an example of instruction and actions that we have that we can show in this panorama. This is just a small adding an operation where you see the operation as such as an instruction, and here you have one item and action in the timeline. We are working a lot with instructions and actions, and here we are on a more open ground because this is still there are still new things in the OpenEHR archetype model, how to support number of, how we go from one instruction to another instruction and things like this. But this is a very important area to solve and find good solution. If we know, I've shown some screenshots from the use of DIPS Arena. There are a lot more in the system, but I want to address another part, how we can do the admin of the archetypes. So there need to be an infrastructure for handling archetypes, as we have been talking about during the 2 days. This picture from the architect standard, OpenEHR standard, shows how you go from a CKM into importing archetypes and templates into your particular electronic health record and storing them in an archetype database internally. Then you use this to at runtime to create the different health record with the different contributions. So if you think about this, how are we doing this? We have added into DIPS a specific tile which we call archetype admin, which we have two different alternatives, either to just import the archetype themselves and also to import templates. The templates are then made, either they are part of the CKM or they are made outside the system with a template designer. Now you can see we have a number of archetypes already registered in the system, and the information here is basically the definition and how we get the data from the archetypes that are utilized when we do a query in the database. The same for templates, operational templates. Yeah. So, and what we like to see is to enhance the whole admin of archetypes much more, to make it even more flexible. Because the way we do it is we import archetypes, then we tell the system how should they turn up in the form viewer, how should they turn up in the panorama timeline viewing. So there is a number of things we can configure in order to utilize the archetype in a flexible way. If just to summarize about the architecture, currently we are, as I said, implementing this interface both for getting forms to the different applications. We are auto-generating today the forms, and then we are able to do queries. What we are planning to do further on is to make the form even more flexible. We see that just auto-generating forms based on operational templates is maybe not flexible enough to deal with all the cases. So we want to enhance this and utilize standards that we like to see for defining the forms and rendering forms into our different apps. So that's one enhancement. The other important enhancement is to standardize the way we do queries. Currently, we are doing a more proprietary query to get the data, the archetype data out of the database. But as you know, there is an archetype query language, AQL, and we are now planning to implement this to make all the apps being able to do AQL. And we are working very much together with the other vendors, Maran, to, for example, to deal with this issue. So further development on the short time is supporting AQL. It is to do a general form render, put that into the system, so we can have more flexible forms. It is also to provide new tools for dealing with the definition of archetype, templates, and forms together, so we have a much easier experience. Those of you who have been working with the different tools know that there are some challenges in utilizing the tools in an efficient way. And I hope that we can bring something to the OpenEHR community in this area, help to make this easier for everyone. And then, of course, as Shane presented, supporting GDL will be critical to the system, and we also would like to do that as soon as possible. So in the end, I just want to show you an example if we can get the healthcare sector up and running with OpenEHR and the standards. If we think about having two different hospitals with their implementation of OpenEHR, and they are both based on the same CKM, I see a possibility to both make it much easier to introduce changes in each hospital, but also to start thinking about communicating between the hospitals utilizing the same information. I think that will be a major shift in the time it will take to introduce new communication between parties in the healthcare sector. And also, if we can do the same in the communication with the national quality registers, this is normally things that take from 5 to 10 years to implement new access to the quality registers. This could be shortened down to maybe months or just years, or a much shorter time if we can utilize the archetypes, also for communication.
One of our main challenges is to transition both internally and for all the clients that we have, how to get into a state where they are on a modern platform which is archetype based. I have two basic ideas in my head all the time. It's been like this for a year, and I don't remember my kid's name. I don't know if my dog's alive. I only have two things that I think about, and one is the implementation of the existing DIPS Classic on Oslo University Hospital, which happens to be one of the largest hospitals in Northern Europe. Enormous construction of 4 hospitals with 4 different systems, not 4 different EHRs. They have only 2 different EHRs now, but they have different POS systems, they have different lab systems, they have different PAC systems. Actually, it's the way that if earlier in history, if one of them chose one system, the other one would go to any length to choose a different system. So it's pretty heterogeneous. It's a fantastic project. It runs very well, and I'm confident and it's not because of us, it's because they have a very professional staff that actually does this, runs this project. It's about 62,000 man days invested into the project organization alone, 250 something people for 2 years, 1 billion documents that they convert, and so on and so forth. So that's one idea. And while we support that big implementation of the old system that we have, the one that we are not that concerned about developing anymore, we are going to develop this arena. So it makes us kind of very broad standing in the sense that we have one foot here and the other foot there, and it's sometimes quite complicated. To us, it's a huge investment, the DIPS Arena. Roughly about 150 million euro goes into the development of DIPS Arena over the course of 2012 and 2016. And OpenEHR is a central part of the strategy. The goal is not very humble. It's to develop the world's best EHR. Should be that much. And with a high level of functionality, an open platform, and a flexible structure, so that we can, exactly like Rong so brilliantly explained, we can follow the development of medicine. So, how do you go about when you want to move 15 hospital trusts, big hospitals, some of them, and 75,000 users from one platform into another platform, which is extremely different from what they know today. From a well-known data structure into a system that is, if you don't have a feature, why don't you go ahead and develop this feature as an archetype or a template and then have it in your system? It's a totally different way of thinking, not just for the hospitals. This is the schematics of how we go about it. This is our client-server application that is currently running, or actually it's this version where there's a part service-oriented architecture, and then the Arena client on top of that same, and this one. It starts to get complicated, right? At least for me as a doctor, it's getting quite complicated at this stage. But the end stage over here is a totally new system where the customer didn't, hopefully, have to convert any data on the way. This is another way of putting it. We're changing the engine of the plane in flight. And this is how it feels like. The issue is that we have a lot of stuff in the old system that we're quite happy with. It works well. It's very well fitted to the Norwegian health system. We see no reason for changing it. This goes to the part of the HIS, the administrative functions. A lot of those are, but there are also clinical functions that we feel that way about. So what we do there is that we keep the existing database structure. We add services or move the logic to the service level, and then we make a new user interface. I mean, it makes sense. Then we have the new functionality, things that we don't have. That is based, and it's mainly related to clinical functionality. And it's, we've decided we go for the open EHR model. It's all about structured patient records and process and decision support. And Rong came last year, bless you, Rong, with the GDL. Which fits like a hand in a glove for this strategy. And then the really difficult part, the stuff that needs improvement. We have a lot of functionality that we're not quite happy with. Either the data model isn't as it should, or the functionality is not what it should. We need to change it. We want to replace it. But we do have a lot of users and we do have a lot of legacy data. And since there's one more requirement. We can't do an overnight change. We can't say to the users that starting from tomorrow, every one of you is going to use another system. That's not a viable. We have to do it a little bit more stepwise. It's a development project. So we have to handle the legacy situation. So this makes it quite expensive and complex. Also, I don't know if any of you have tried to produce an EHR in an old-fashioned way and then convert to a new modern way of doing it. I don't know if you had that experience, but we're starting to build that experience now, and it's enormously hard. It's the change of mindset. The two-level modeling idea is extremely hard to sell in-house. I'm being honest. Extremely hard to sell the idea of two-level modeling inside our own company. It's, on the other hand, quite easy to sell outside. Customers tend to like the idea. It's not easy to do, and it's not a silver bullet. It's not a silver bullet that you would think it is, but it's much easier to sell outside the company than inside. And as Silje demonstrated, open EHR is complex. Every time I sit down with an archetype or an open EHR issue, I learn something new. So the first step that you have to climb is huge. And it takes time. I mean, internal and external capacity building takes a lot of time and a pretty constant effort. I'm guessing wrong that, I mean, you do have the same experience. I'm hoping that you have felt some of the same thoughts that I have. But we do also have some advantages as a company and as a country. We are in the lucky position that out of the 4 regional health trusts that we have in Norway, 3 of them are currently our clients, our customers. And they all use the classic DIPS. Actually, it's the classic. Or no, the old classic became the classic, and then the new became the classic, and now there's a new one, and that will also obviously become classic at some time. But now it's the plan to migrate to DIPS Arena. Everyone is trying to figure out how to do that, and at the same time they're also consolidating, which is also very interesting, because the regions up until now have been having their own, a region can consist of 4 hospitals to 9 hospitals. And even those hospitals have had multiple databases, because they used to be 3 hospitals before they became 1 hospital. So it's kind of a merger in a merger. And what the customers are doing right now is that they are merging their databases into as few as possible, which gives us, again, the same opportunities that Rong described, stuff for whole regions. Opens up totally new chapter for creating and capitalizing on knowledge. So we want to, on top of this, we want to introduce the structured patient records and the CDS capacity. But where do we start? So I'm going to tell you about something called the Interregional Structured Patient Record Project. It's even harder to say in Norwegian. I could have called it the national, but I don't, because that wouldn't be politically correct. Because remember, 3 out of 4 regions are customers, and we invited the 4th one, but they're in the middle of a tender process, and it's complicated. So from April to June this month, we the 3 regions named clinicians on the basis of being a clinician of some level. Most of them actually, archetype naive, never heard about an archetype. And then, in addition to that, also health informatics staff. They may be doctors, nurses, or whatever, but it was important that it shouldn't just be the usual suspects like us that have been interested in this for a long time. It should be clinicians that don't know about open EHR. And we played the role as host, but we wanted this to be vendor neutral. So it doesn't say DIPS anywhere, because this is something that we will send to Silja as contribution to our national CKM. And the deliverables was simple. Actually, the goal was a bit wider than that, but we've soon realized that this was what we could do in three meetings that we had. We had 3 workshops. It's an interregional, hopefully to be national, admission note. And it's generic, and well, that fits with how admission notes in Norway are. They are pretty generic, but it is also a starting point for necessary specialization if you need that. The first step actually didn't have much to do with archetypes. It was a very natural and sensible thing to do when you do have a computerized system. That is to pull out information from your admission note that is really persistent. that isn't new from time to time, but which is actually just repetition of something that you're reading. You read into the dictaphone. The most expensive cut and paste routine or copy and paste routine in the world is when you read from the screen into your dictaphone and someone types it up over again. And I've done it myself. I'm not proud of it, but it happens every day in our hospitals. So what used to be one document, text document, is now proposed as 5 to 7 documents. And 5 to 7 depends on whether you have a medication system or not. So we have a document which resembles the problem list that we know from OpenEHR, a heredity document, social status document, substance use document, and so on. And then step 2 was to structure these documents again. The starting point was the generic template that we have today in all hospitals and then that all medical students learn to recite from heart when they study medicine. It's a 2-page document going through first the background and the presenting problem and natural functions, and then the head-to-toe examination. And that's a very interesting thing, because I'm not sure how it is in other systems, but I've been wondering, why did we keep this document when we introduced the paperless system more than 15 years ago? 13 years ago, we had the first hospital in Norwegian that was allowed to be paperless, no paper master. Why did we keep this document, what we call electric paper? And the reason I remember, because I was there when it happened, it was that the doctors didn't want this. They didn't want an EHR. They wanted their paper. So what they had in the first hospital, I remember what they had to do. The IT director, you know what he did? He disabled all the printers so that the doctors couldn't force their secretaries or the nurses to print out the paper from the EHR. And it was in 2002. It's not that far back. And that's the direct reason why we still have the paper. It is a paper. It looks exactly like the one that we used to do on typewriters, only it's printed from the screen. So anyway, that was another story. Now the motivation is there. And that's important. Now there is actually a motivation, and people are actually asking, why didn't we do this long time ago? And I tell them this story, and that's why we didn't do it long time ago, but now we've done. And we sent out material, and there was about 25 delegates. 10 of them is what I would regard as active clinicians, and at all levels and in different specialties. Psychiatrists, surgeons, internal medicine, and even some union doctors. So the methodology was, let's not talk too much about archetypes, and we didn't. They shouldn't have to worry about archetypes at this. We can teach them that later. But we said that for each paragraph in this document, decide whether you want it to be in the future free text or structured data, and you had to explain why it is so. The why was important. Every time we said something, it was a why attached to it. And the goal was to have a 2-minute admission note, not a 20-minute total form. So speed was everything. And we used mock-ups. We didn't use our system. We did show it once, but it was actually a point not to use it, and that's 2 reasons. One is that we wanted it to be vendor neutral. The other one is that clinicians tend to catch, why is that a drop-down and not a checkbox, and why is it like that, and it should be the other way around, and miss the point. So we drew prototypes instead, the mock-ups. And this is just an example. It's not beautiful, and that's not the point of it, but it shows the persistent documents here, and what we did, which is not how the archetype is today, but what was a very strong feeling from our panel, is that I don't need the structured findings. I don't want to waste time on that because it gets quite complicated. So they elected not to have structured findings, But they wanted simply to say, is this normal, is this pathological, or I didn't really examine it at all. That's what they need. Interesting. I'm not sure if we would have landed on that without asking, but that's what they actually wanted at this level. So we haven't really analyzed we had the last workshop yesterday, but there's around 40 archetypes involved, 5 to 10 depending. Of them, we cannot find suitable archetypes in the international CKM as it is, so they have to be made from scratch. And 10 to 15, depending on the number above, will need to have some changes in order for us to use it. And that's very interesting, because it also will be kind of a check. Is it possible to collaborate on this across borders, across systems? Will the others agree, or will we have to make our own archetypes, which hopefully are quite similar but not exactly similar? That's an interesting question. I'm sure we can have discussions on that. And what we actually have, what is actually within reach, is a national standardized document that is used for every admission in this country. I mean, if EPIC wins the next tender in Trondheim, we can offer them this template. It's vendor neutral, so if they want it, they can have it. That was a joke. You didn't get it? But it's based on international archetypes. That's within reach. Okay. I don't know how much time I have left. Do you?
It's okay.
Okay. Yeah, fine. Then I can slow down. What else? This is not this is just one initiative. I'm going to tell you briefly about 3 other initiatives that we are working on right now that is based on archetype. The first one is the psychiatric commitment functionality. And then there's something on surgery planning and one ER tool. To start with psychiatric commitment, a few years back, or actually a lot of years back now, it must be almost 8 years back, there was a new standard made in Norway. We have used to have a standardization office that made a new standard. And it will be made law probably next year. So all the hospital has to adapt this standard for their psychiatric care. And the current module that we have in DIPS Classic doesn't really fulfill all these requirements. I mean, it does the job, but it's not according to the standard. And the focus of this is that, this is involuntary psychiatric commitment, and I'm sure in every country that is a big deal. When you take someone's freedom away, there should be checks and balances. And the focus is very much on correct due process and having the paperwork and the workflow in order, and being able to show that, to document that and show that. For us, we said that, okay, we have to do this anyway. Let's use this as an example to see how far can we get with an archetype approach. If we can solve this with an archetype approach, it will be a quite solid evidence that we have made the right decision. And it's a little bit of a new territory, an uncharted territory, because it has to do a lot with instructions and actions process. Things that isn't really done. Not that much is done on it, and there are more questions than answers for a lot of these areas. There is a pilot planned here in Tromsø, hopefully this fall. The short story of this is that the happy case is very easy to fulfill with the archetype approach. As I will come back to, we probably underestimated the amount of logic and safety that you have to build around such a configurable solution to make sure that the user doesn't do too many mistakes or screw the system up. I mean, it's not unexpected, though, but it's a learning anyway. Same thing for surgery planning. We do have a quite advanced surgery planning module in DIPS Classic, but especially for the early planning, we don't feel it's good enough, and also our customers don't feel it's good enough. And when I mean early planning, I mean from the point where you're in the doctor's office and he says to you, my good man, I'm going to operate your knee. And from there it starts. When it comes to the part, with all the operating theaters and which doctors go where and which knife is where and which X-ray machine is where, that one we have pretty well covered. But the process leading to that moment is not that well supported. Again, we saw it as a nice pilot for us to see, can we achieve this functionality? Again, it's a lot about instructions and actions combined with templates with observation at certain time points, and documents being created, or documents being sent in the document workflow system to make sure that the anesthesiologist knows that he is supposed to do a pre-op evaluation of this patient tomorrow at this time. Again, same experience. You can do a lot very easy. And then there are a lot of exceptions that aren't that easy to handle within the model, so you have to do some coding around it. And hopefully, start of next year, we will pilot this also here in Tromsø. We have a close collaboration with the hospital here in Tromsø and with the region, northern region. Last thing I'm going to talk about is the emergency room application, and I mean, Sigurd briefly showed it. It's quite a simple application. It's based actually on a module that we developed for Arena before we went into the archetype. The first thing we did on Arena, and it's basically a wall application, something you put on a big screen in the emergency room, touch screens. It's a patient list, triage functionality, and what we did is that we built in the archetype support that Sigurd showed, the ability that any archetype can be made a column in this list, so that you can add all sorts and filter on all sorts of observations or other archetypes for that being related to this patient. This one, I mean, the original ER module is already in production in 2 hospitals in Norway, but this one with the archetype functionality will enter production on 20th of October, 2 places in Oslo University Hospital. One is they have a surgical ER downtown Oslo, quite high turnover, 300 patients per 24 hours. Basically, if you break your bone or scratch your head or whatever, you end up there, and they treat you and they try to get rid of you as fast as possible. So this is a kind of a logistics tool for them to get you through the system as fast as possible. The other one is the emergency reception at the Ullevål Oslo University Hospital, where they do the traumas and all other patients coming in. And it looks something like that. This is the list, and this is the triage that is set for each patient, and these are warnings that these patients the time has expired for these patients, so you have to better run there quickly. And it doesn't show in this picture, but you can, as I said, you can configure up any kind of archetypes as column in this application. This is the electronic chart module, or the timeline. And if I understood your question correctly, Aina, this is sort of a graphical representation of archetypes. This is blood pressure, there's a pulse measurement, this is the saturation, O2 saturation. And obviously this can be manually registered or sent from a medical device. It's a lot of work actually to create good functionality to be able to graphically represent any kind of archetypes. It's possible. I mean, the archetype, that's what the archetype model does. It gives us the information that we can do stuff like that, but it's still a bit hard. So like this representation is pretty much developed with these parameters in mind, right? But the idea is that you should be able to do this meaningfully and for all kinds of parameters. So I feel I'm sort of repeating myself, but this is something that I hear from all the other vendors as well. It's powerful. It's probably the best that's out there. Probably the best alternative. But it's extremely complex. It's hard to understand. I don't claim to understand it. I can at best do some modeling. And it's taken, we have part of the team that's working on this here in the room, and I think they will also say that it's taken quite a long time to kind of get a grip of or get a grasp of it. We do have some issues related to the new platform, which isn't due to OpenAir at all, but how we manage a reality with old and new data. And I mean, the OpenAir standard actually opens for some possibilities there, which we will try to utilize. And as Sigurd mentioned, the quality of the forms that we have been making, that's an issue. We see that the users want to be able to create forms that are more specifically designed to their needs. Auto generation doesn't really work. We did underestimate, as I mentioned, the need for business logic around functionality made up around structured documents. And it's usually not a problem when it comes to register or documenting observations or evaluations, but it applies to the process support. If you have an instruction and you have actions that are going to document the state of a certain process, the possibility of the users to do something that you didn't really think about is there. And we have to create functionality or some kind of safeguard around that to make sure it doesn't happen. So, again, we are in an extremely lucky position in Norway because we have such strong customer support for the idea. Everyone on the customer side, I haven't really talked to anyone on the customer side that says that, you know, this open EHR thing, that's a really bad idea. I mean, having an open EMR or an EHR, not the open EHR brand, but the idea of a system that is actually open. No one says that that's a bad idea. But the job is enormous. And we are lucky that we have now, I feel we have a very good collaboration between the industrial partners of OpenAir. We are companies of comparable size. We are we've been able to we have almost the same experiences although we are probably the youngest company in this industrial collaboration, or the company that came in last. But we see that there's a need for a much stronger and more focused collaboration in the open air community. And that is, I mean, first of all, it goes to us ourselves. We have to, the industrial partners have to collaborate if this is going, if we are going to pull this off. But it also, I mean, this also has to do with academic activity. I mean, how do we choose our interest fields when it comes to academic activity? I mean, how are we? Can we collaborate in a way that we all feel is that we are making ourselves relevant to each other, that the research projects feed in a relevant way to where the industry is, and vice versa. Obviously, we need more archetypes. Selling the idea without the archetypes is only going to hold for so long. It's kind of like selling thin air. Until we get a stack of archetypes that we can really reuse between countries and between vendors, this is just a good idea. Same goes for tooling. Again, I wish I had the presentation that Rong had, because last year when I got the GDL editor in my computer first time and I saw what he had done, I was thinking, wow, finally there's hope. Because that's what we want to achieve as a clinician working into this. This is actually what we want to achieve. This has been the whole point for me getting interested in this, is that in health informatics, is to be able to create functionality that helps me in my clinical work. And my clinical work is changing. What was good practice 5 years ago in medicine isn't really considered good practice. And with the tools that we are about to develop now, we can even make that cycle go much faster, as Rong rightly mentioned. And I mean, this is very close to the whole motivation, I guess, for many doctors to be involved in health informatics at all. So it may seem like sort of a pessimistic approach that I give, and I hope that's not the impression. I mean, I've tried to be honest, and this is as honest as it gets. But the essence of it is that, I mean, this is the best alternative. That I'm not aware of any other options that we have that will give us more than the track that we have selected now. But it is a lot of work. It is quite hard to do. I mean, intellectually very stimulating, and no single actor is going to be able to do this alone.